Exposed, how an amazing Mafia boss rescued me from kidnappers, my life transformed forever. Max trudged through the gritty streets of a neighborhood that celebrated art while harboring chaos, armed only with his leather notebook and a heart full of yearning for inspiration. Street murals sprawled across crumbling walls, bold colors clashing with urban decay, but amid the vibrancy, he felt a creeping sense of trepidation. While his colleagues reveled in flamboyance, Max was the quiet observer, lurking at the borderline of art and fear. Wasn't he just a professor, a mere conduit of knowledge? The artist within him lay stranded beneath his self-imposed restraints, a choking web of insecurities constricting his throat. Tonight felt different. His hands trembled as he jotted down notes, the pencil slightly shaking, perhaps mirroring the instability of the very ground he walked. It was in this uncertainty that an all-too-familiar dread gripped him, a fear of obscurity, of never truly belonging. Max imagined himself on those vibrant canvases, yet how could he compete when his spirit felt caged among brilliant souls? Art had always been the language he struggled to speak, and art history was the puppet show he performed on stage. Before he could question this further, darkness consumed him, shadows materialized, and he was yanked into a reality that twisted his academic life into a horror show. Kidnapped, stripped of titles and philosophy, he was no longer a professor. He was a hostage, a living echo of the crime and culture he taught about, now up close and personal. But salvation came unexpectedly. Tony, the infamous Mafia boss known for his ruthless demeanor and enigmatic charm, emerged from the chaos. "You're in good hands now," he said, a calculated grin spreading across his face. Max could only blink, bewildered. Gratitude flickered. How could someone like Tony, brimming with power and danger, care about a sensitive professor drowning in his anxieties? Caught off guard by the lavish connections Tony had forged with the local art scene, Max found himself straddling a moral precipice. His heart raced, wrestling between curiosity and apprehension. Would accepting aid from this mobster betray his values? Where did ambition end and complicity begin? The underground world of artists Tony protected felt alluringly dangerous, yet it was also deeply fraught. He felt like a traitor envisioning himself at Tony's extravagant galas, surrounded by creatives yet clashing with the stark reality of organized crime. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Max wrestled with anxiety as he learned of conspiracies targeting the very fabric of the art community he once surveyed safely from the ivory tower of academia. Could he use this opportunity to unearth the threads that tied his artistic lineage to Tony's world? The complexities of family and loyalty tangled against the pristine canvas of his life. He could feel himself slipping away from familiar corridors and into an alarming existential quandary. As he stared at the portrait of his own family hanging in his modest apartment, he felt a burgeoning turmoil, the clash of loyalty tearing at him from the inside out. Did he owe his allegiance to the ghosts of his past or the tantalizing prospects of a potentially explosive future? Caught between warring ambitions, Max found himself standing on a precipice. Would he take the plunge into the chaos surrounding him, or retreat back to the rigid, safe academia he so despised? The door creaked ominously as challenges loomed closer, and Max realized every choice carried consequences that could forever alter the carefully painted portrait of his life. The threads of his new reality began weaving an intricate tapestry of fear and possibility, and Max stood breathless before a future he had never envisioned, straining under the weight of moral dilemmas that rippled like waves in his turbulent heart. An unsettling thought twisted in his mind, amplifying the silence. Was he ready to embrace what could potentially redefine everything he thought he understood about art, loyalty, and family? The tension in Max's chest tightened further as he walked the fine line of his choices. Uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud, but he felt the pull of opportunity, tempting him toward unknown realms. Tonight, it was as if the universe conspired to unravel the boundaries of his existence, challenging him to step beyond the Professor's podium into new realms of self-discovery. Surrounded by graffiti-splashed walls and distant echoes of laughter from artists blissfully ignorant of the shadows lurking nearby, he approached Tony's gallery. Marvelous works of art adorned every wall, an unthinkable array of passion clashing against despair. Each canvas silently narrated stories of struggle and triumph, and Max wondered if there was a piece of himself concealed within them, waiting to be liberated. Would he find a voice within this artistic rebellion, or would he remain a mere observer? A strange association formed in his mind. Tony was both the puppeteer and the liberator. The very man who held a semblance of power over him was also inexplicably intertwined with the artistic revival unfolding across the city. To engage, to provoke discussions, to confront the complexities of art alongside a man like Tony felt equally exhilarating and terrifying. Max forced himself to breathe, grappling with the impulse to retreat. What if I explored what lay ahead? A flicker of defiance sparked within him, igniting a choice he never thought possible. The old Max, steeped in codes of academia, shied away from the chaos of real life. But now, standing at this precipice, something shifted. The fear that plagued him began to morph into resolve. Later that evening, he found himself seated at a sumptuous banquet table surrounded by brilliantly audacious artists. Their conversations swirled around him like fireflies, illuminating ideas about art's potential to provoke and challenge societal norms. Each word sang with enthusiasm, almost as if coercing him to shed his inhibitions. As he sipped wine, he could feel the glow of creativity threading through the room, daring him to embark on a journey of exploration. And yet, a shadow clung to the edges of this newfound excitement. Max's anxiety simmered, relentlessly reminding him why he felt so out of place. Questions raced through his mind. What did you truly want? Were you ready to confront the darker facets of creativity that accompanied a man the world deemed untouchable? Amidst the laughter, a nagging doubt whispered. It reminded him of the moral line he might be crossing, urging caution as he contemplated his next move. Glimmers of self-realization shone amidst the chaos. He was no longer merely a spectator, he craved involvement, influence. The art world, pulsating with the electricity of the streets, threatened to embrace him, yet he sensed deeper implications in this choice. Would giving in mean sacrificing part of his very essence for the gilded allure of fame and recognition? As the night wore on, Max engaged deeper, surprising himself with a spirited discussion about the juxtaposition of chaos and creativity with a renowned street artist. Their exchange revealed hidden convictions within him. He was not just relaying theories, he longed to weave his narrative into the very fabric of the world he staunchly critiqued. Yet, as exhilaration twisted with fear, the reality of his choice pummeled him. Facing Tony was not merely about acceptance but a confrontation with the moral ambiguity that characterized both art and life. With his heart racing, the undeniable truth resounded through him: he was on a collision course with his identity, a volatile mixture of ambition and apprehension drawing him ever closer to the precipice. Just as Max began to formulate a plan, a voice pierced through the revelry, demanding attention. You want to be part of this world? It was Tony, his presence commanding yet inviting, eyes locked onto Max's with fervor. Then let us see what you're made of, he challenged, leaning closer. Now, with the prospect of a test looming ahead, doubt and determination warred within him. As Max prepared to respond, the consequences of action and inaction crystallized before him, each option growing heavier than the last. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the siren song of comfort pull him back into the shadows? One truth echoed increasingly louder: he was on the verge of unveiling the true Max, but at what cost? Max's breath hitched as Tony's challenge hung in the air, heavy with implication. The room felt uncomfortably intimate, an arena where judgments awaited under the guise of camaraderie. He had stepped into an uncharted territory, and Tony's gaze bore down on him like a spotlight, a relentless call to action. Let us see what you're made of, Tony repeated, his voice almost a low growl. The glimmer of expectation in his eyes evoked a strange mix of flattery and fear within Max. This was uncharted territory, the stakes had suddenly escalated. It felt as if he had taken a step onto a stage, the audience oblivious to the horror show brewing in his mind. What did being part of this world truly mean? Did it require sacrificing his principles, blending into a mosaic where deceit may be a brushstroke? All right, what do you want from me? Max's voice trembled slightly, betraying the turmoil bubbling beneath his calm facade. Suddenly, the conversation enfolded him, tidal waves of anticipation crashing over his thoughts. Tony chuckled, the sound rich and layered. He leaned back, surveying the table, the artists still caught in their whirlwind of discussion, oblivious to the gravity of their interaction. I can help you find your place here if you're willing to explore beyond the academic. Art doesn't just reside in dusty books, it's a living, breathing entity. You have to feel it, bleed onto the canvas. Max blinked, processing the notion. Academic theory had felt safe, a cocoon he had crafted meticulously over years of study and muted existence. But perhaps Tony was right. Where had that theory gotten him? A promotion? A secure job? Boring comfort? Outside, he could hear the thump of music from the street, wild and unfettered. A wild gamble felt thrilling but terrifying. I don't want to just replicate what others do. I want depth, Max countered, his resolve stronger than before. He was desperate for authenticity, for raw, unfiltered connection. The idea of investing his soul into the art frightened him, yet he couldn't deny a flicker of excitement coursing through his veins. Tony nodded, a knowing look sparkling in his eyes. Then let us start with what scares you. Meet me tomorrow night. I have a task. But know this, art demands vulnerability. You will have to look into yourself and find what you're afraid to face. And that means digging deep. Max's heart raced. He hesitated, the weight of a decision swirling around him. Could he truly expose those buried fears? What if what lay beneath was unpalatable? Or worse, what if he found nothing? The divergent paths chafed at him, he stood at the crossroads of self-actualization and disillusionment. Still, the idea of blending his academic background with raw artistic expression tugged at him, a fusion of intellect and passion. He yearned to be genuine, to break free from the meticulously maintained facade that had served to shield him throughout his life. I'll do it, he finally asserted, the words punctuated by a surge of adrenaline. Good, Tony said, deceptively calm. Prepare yourself, Max. The world of art isn't forgiving. As the night drew to a close, a new urgency coursed through him. He could no longer be the passive observer, he had ignited a fire within that refused to be dimmed. Cradling a glass of wine, Max took a moment to stare around the gallery. A cacophony of voices and thoughts filled the space, but within him, silence reigned, an abyss of uncertainty and burgeoning excitement. Would he have the strength to confront his identity? To navigate through the threats of exposure? Tomorrow would be the first step, but who would emerge from the depths of his uncertainties? As he considered the looming task, he couldn't shake the feeling that Tony's challenge was merely the beginning. It was about to become personal, and the real test of his will had not yet even begun. Before he could overthink the implications, a lovely woman caught his eye from across the room, her vibrant energy calling to him. Unbeknownst to him, she would soon become a pivotal figure in this unfolding saga. Could her presence usher in a change he had never anticipated? As he ventured to speak with her, the pulse of the night vibrated through him, foreshadowing the chase ahead, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew. The next day stretched before Max like an uncharted map, each hour filled with tension and trepidation. He woke with a knot in his stomach, the implications of his commitment to Tony's challenge tumbling through his mind like a storm. The definition of vulnerability surged, taking on various shapes that clawed at him. Would he truly be ready to confront the unrefined truths nestled deep within him? Was he prepared to expose emotions that had long been buried under layers of his composed exterior? He spent the day distracted, the office around him fading into a blur. Even his once cherished academic responsibilities felt hollow, reduced to mere tasks without substance. Max's colleagues bantered lightheartedly, their voices creating a dissonance in his psyche. Their carefree shenanigans highlighted his inner plight. He felt like an imposter, cloaked in a guise he didn't believe he belonged to anymore. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the city in shadows, he found himself at the designated meeting place, an abandoned warehouse that vibrated with the rhythmic cadence of music emanating from a nearby underground venue. Each pulsing beat seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the structure, mirroring the rhythm of his racing heart as he mentally rehearsed his intentions. Tony appeared almost as a specter, emerging from the shadows and immediately assessing Max with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. "Glad you decided to make it. Tonight, you'll face that resistive force within you," he declared, arching an eyebrow and gesturing toward the entrance of the warehouse. The air inside crackled with an energy that felt almost electric, yet suffocating. Various artists set up their equipment, each in their respective domain, one section holding canvases strewn about, another with musicians testing their instruments. Max's nerves threatened to overwhelm him as he stepped further inside, but he remained resolute. This was his moment of truth. Your task: create something without hesitation. Let your instincts guide you, not your intellect, Tony instructed, his authority punctuating the raw excitement around them. The directive churned in Max's brain. How could he shed years of practiced precision? Most people fear failure, Tony continued, his voice low and grave. They hold on to that fear, letting it dictate their every move. But here, failure is an essential tool and instrument for growth. Max swallowed, the implication heading straight for his gut. He was gripped by a mixture of apprehension and audacity. Was he truly willing to embrace that notion? To potentially fail in front of others, a thought that sent icy tendrils of discomfort through him. With shaky hands, he approached an empty canvas, feeling as though his past barriers were crumbling, exposing his vulnerability inch by inch. He debated whether to reach for the paintbrush or walk away. The familiarity of fear tugged at him yet again, whispering doubts into his ear. But what if this transformative plunge brought forth a part of him he had never known? Finally, he lifted the brush, his first stroke bold yet hesitant. Color erupted against the canvas, and a rush of adrenaline surged in its wake. Slowly, instinct took over, a dance between chaos and creation, as he let go of the suffocating grip of structure. His heartbeat quickened, syncing with the vibrant atmosphere around him. Each stroke felt like a discovery, a revelation of both strength and fragility, and within the exploration, Max inhaled the intoxicating scent of freedom. The rhythm of the music pulsed through his body, and he found himself slipping deeper into a realm of self-expression he had never allowed himself to cherish. But just as elation enveloped him, an unexpected voice sliced through the veil of his focus. "What are you really afraid of, Max?" Tony called from the shadows, prompting him to pause. The question reverberated like a challenge, compelling him to confront not just creative fears but the depths of his own darkness. As he stood in the midst of this artistic frenzy, a dawning realization struck him: pouring his abstract self onto the canvas was only the beginning, and he must venture beyond a simple act of creation. What lay buried beneath this vivid unfolding? What truths awaited revelation? The tension rose, challenging Max to summon the courage to confront whatever darkness still loomed ahead. The raw potential of this moment burgeoned within him, a burgeoning fusion of artistry and authenticity. And in the back of his mind, a singular thought ignited: had he merely scratched the surface of who he could be? Suddenly, the weight of his uncharted journey expanded before him like a horizon filled with possibilities and fear. Tomorrow would offer clarity, but first, he would need to remain anchored in this dizzying moment of truth, facing the call to turn vulnerability into strength. Max's hand trembled slightly as he continued to apply paint to the canvas, strokes blending chaotically into a brilliant amalgamation of colors. The question Tony posed echoed in his mind, a persistent whisper that sharpened his focus. What was he really afraid of? As each brushstroke danced across the surface, it was becoming more than just a visual expression, it was a confrontation with his own psyche. The noise of the warehouse faded, enveloped in a cocoon of his own creation. Each flourish represented an unrevealed aspect of himself, emotional threads that he had kept neatly tucked away under the facade of control and decorum. The liberation that initially filled him began to wrestle with an onslaught of unease. What if his instincts led him astray? What if his raw expression fell short of the expectations he had unknowingly set for himself? Doubt battled determination within him. The awareness that the very essence of who he was lay in the balance clashed with the vibrant energy of self-discovery that swirled around him. When did he become so afraid of exposing the deepest parts of himself? Failure or success, it doesn't matter. What matters is the courage to face yourself. Tony's voice resonated, cutting through the haze. Max focused on the canvas again, and with a forceful movement, he added a streak of fiery red, a release of pent-up frustration, a declaration that he would no longer hide. If not here, then where? If not now, then when? The rhythm of the music lifted him, emboldening his strokes, yet simultaneously stirring the prospect of deeper revelations. The vibrant chaos of creation transformed into a manifestation of his inner turmoil, each bold stroke a battle cry against years of self-imposed limitations. The paradox of liberation and confinement became tangible on the canvas. Suddenly, clarity pierced through the mist of emotion. He wasn't merely pouring paint, he was wrestling with the parts of himself he had been too cautious to acknowledge. Fragments of childhood fears, ambitions denied, and the ghosts of his past confronted him through vivid colors. It was art as a mirror reflecting truths he had overlooked. But within that clarity was a deeper question. If this is only a glimpse, what happens when the brush leaves the canvas? A surge of apprehension washed over him again, spurred by the thought of revealing these newfound layers to the outside world. The very act of personal expression bore the weight of potential judgment and scrutiny. Could he endure that? Tony's insights came flooding back. Vulnerability is strength. It wasn't merely an act of creation in front of an audience, it was about embodying authenticity. Performing with honesty could offer catharsis, and with it, an opportunity for transformation. In that moment, something shifted within him. The apprehension morphed into determination. Each color on the canvas was not just a shade but a piece of himself, a vivid declaration of his existence meriting acknowledgement. He had been navigating life under the pressure of expectations for far too long, carefully curating his persona to fit into a mold. With newfound resolve, Max pushed his limits, abandoning hesitation. Canvas after canvas awaited his unfiltered expression. What other parts of him had yet to emerge? As he stepped back to view his progress, he realized it was not just a chaotic splatter of paint, it was a narrative unfolding, a quiet declaration that he was ready to confront the unknown. As he lingered in that electric moment, the sound of footsteps approached from behind him. An unexpected presence pierced his bubble of focus, leaving him to wonder whether he was ready for whatever revelations were about to come. "Let us see if you're brave enough to show this to the world," Tony said, the faint challenge laced in his tone igniting a flicker of fear now tinged with excitement. Max's heart raced at the daunting prospect. Could he truly expose this newly unveiled self to others? Would he embrace the discomfort of authenticity in public scrutiny? Tomorrow would demand everything from him, a rehearsal for the ultimate display of courage where vulnerability would need to transform into undeniable strength. And lurking in the corners of his mind was another daunting question: was he prepared to present the raw truths of himself before an audience? The following morning arrived with a weight both thrilling and burdensome. Max stood in front of the full-length mirror, a mix of anticipation and anxiety churning in his gut. His reflection, usually a familiar sight, now felt foreign, every detail magnified by the enormity of what lay ahead. He dressed cautiously, each article of clothing chosen not for the usual aesthetic, but as a statement of intent. Today was not about concealing, today was about revealing, and the very fabric of his attire would serve as the first brushstroke of authenticity he dared to project. He arrived early at the warehouse, the air thick with the tang of paint and the scent of possibility. As his colleagues assembled for the day's activities, their energy crackled through the space, often accompanied by playful banter that seemed foreign to him. Once a master of small talk and light-hearted exchanges, he now felt homesick for that version of himself, a self that felt safe shielding his vulnerabilities behind polished words. Tony was already at the back of the room, prepping the materials for the day's session. His presence was unwavering, a stark reminder of the challenge that loomed before Max. Approaching him, Max felt the pulse of his heart synchronize with the low hum in the atmosphere. "Are you ready to face your fears?" Tony's voice cut through the noise, a steadying force against Max's swirling thoughts. "I think so," he replied, though uncertainty framed his words. "Don't think. Just feel. Allow whatever comes to flow. Remember, authenticity is magnetic. It's what people connect with. Do you want them to see the sincere you?" Those words struck deep, resonating with the part of him that had been stifled for years. He nodded, inhaling a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs like a promise. As the session began, colors flickered across canvases like fires igniting around a camp. His heart raced while disparate emotions coalesced into a fervent momentum. Each stroke of paint became a testimony, every hue a reflection of the struggles and triumphs that existed within him. The sensations swirling around him mingled with the music playing softly in the background, aligning with the rhythm of his pulse, the beat of personal and creative freedom. But as he painted, the voice of doubt returned, weaving through his thoughts like smoke. What if the audience couldn't resonate with him? What if his truths were deemed too stark, too raw, too unrefined? The protective barriers he meticulously constructed over years began to crack under the pressure. "Max." Tony's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "Show us what you've got. It's not about perfection. Embrace the flaws, they breathe life into your art." Those words cascaded over him, flashing images of self-sabotage and self-doubt. It was as if Tony's voice had unlatched a door in his mind, one he hesitated to walk through. Those fears that had previously bound him felt disempowered in the face of the supportive environment they had built. Maybe today wasn't just about painting, perhaps it was about letting go, a chance to discard the weight of others' expectations once and for all. With conviction swelling within, he added sweeping strokes filled with boldness. Each line seemed to rise against the oppressive shadows that had lingered too long. It was dynamic, alive, his very essence on display for the world to see. As his creation unfolded, a palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere. His colleagues paused, their anticipation focused on him, areas of uncertainty brightening into admiration as they began to see a story emerging, a tapestry rich with layers of context and emotion. But just as he became lost in that exhilarating flow, the grip of fear seemed to tighten again. Perhaps it was premature to believe he was ready for this exposure. What if he failed to capture the depths within? What if the very act of revelation became a mirror that reflected unworthy aspects of himself? "Max, step back. Show us the heart of your work," Tony urged, calling him back to the present. Those words sparked something within, the urge to be seen, to let his truth command the stage. He took a breath and pushed himself further, disentangling himself from self-critical shadows. This revelation wasn't merely an exhibition of art, it was liberation, a surrendering of everything he had held tight for far too long. As the session progressed and he neared the finishing touches, his canvas transformed from a mere arrangement of colors into a personal manifesto. And just as he stepped back, a loud crash echoed from the entrance, an untimely disruption that sent shockwaves through the room. "Tony! What just happened?" Max's pulse quickened, the tranquility of creation instantly replaced by concern. His moment of vulnerability was suddenly overshadowed by uncertainty once more, reminding him that authenticity often comes at unexpected costs. What lay beyond that door? Would the confrontation threaten the fragile progress he had made? The layers of his world began to intertwine unpredictably, leaving Max to wonder if he would have the strength to embrace the chaos that demanded to enter when he was most vulnerable. The crash reverberated through the warehouse like a thunderclap, each heartbeat echoed the weight of the moment. Max turned slowly, his breath hitching as his mind raced, trying to decipher what lay behind the door: an intruder, an accident, or a disruption of a different kind. All eyes flicked to the entrance, where shadows mingled with uncertainty. The excitement of creation evaporated into thin air, replaced by a tension that coiled like a taut wire ready to snap. Max felt a jolt in his gut, his earlier courage wavered. "Stay here," Tony instructed, his voice calm yet firm, as he moved toward the door. Max felt rooted to the spot, caught between the instinct to retreat into the safety of anonymity and the desire to confront whatever was coming, the need to stand firm, even in the chaos. "Isn't this about seeing our true selves?" he whispered to himself, the words a faint echo struggling for clarity amidst the noise surrounding him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, compelled by an unrecognized bravery. As a part of him long dormant bubbled to the surface, he considered the risks of exposure more than ever before. What if the force beyond the door did not just shatter the silence but also unmask truths yet unfurled? From the shadows, a figure emerged, a woman, a few years older than him, dressed sharply in a fitted black leather jacket. Her hair fell in a cascade of dark curls, framing her striking face. The room buzzed with sidelong glances, whispers fluttering around like moths drawn to light. Max fought to collect his thoughts as she surveyed the scene, an inscrutable smile arching her lips. "Sorry to crash your party," she began, her tone smooth yet tinged with a hint of challenge. "But I couldn't resist. I heard there was an artist in the house." Was she mocking him? The room felt suffocating as he processed her gaze, one that skimmed over his unfinished canvas, and the vulnerability encapsulated within it. Tony, unfazed, stepped forward. "And you are?" "Just someone who's looking for inspiration," she replied casually, though an electric tension clung to her words. "I wanted to see whether it was real." Max bristled at her implication. Did she see him as a mere spectacle? The canvas he had poured his energies into now seemed inadequate before her scrutiny. But perhaps this was an opportunity, a chance to face not just her skepticism but the judgments that had haunted him forever. As the duality of his internal conflict simmered, he found his voice. "Art isn't meant to be perfect. It's about truth." The conviction rang out before he could fully grasp it, his old self battling toward the surface. The challenge in her eyes goaded him, so he kept speaking. "It's raw and unfiltered, just like everyone in this room." Her eyebrows raised, surprise flickering across her face before melting into intrigue. "Tell me more about that truth then, Max. What are you afraid of?" His stomach churned. The question bore deep, unraveling layers that he thought were still buried beneath the bravado. Afraid? The irony stung deep. What a foreign idea. Wasn't he already wading in vulnerable waters? "I'm afraid that my truth isn't good enough. That it won't resonate, or that it will get lost in the chaos. Or maybe," she stepped closer, invading that tentative barrier, "you're afraid to face its power, the power to connect and provoke." Encouraged by her audacity, something began to shift inside him. For so long, he had wrapped himself in a cocoon woven from fear and expectation. What if he didn't just embrace the chaos but wielded it? His heart raced at the possibilities. "Show us," she pressed, a challenge now pulsing in her voice. "Reveal what's within. Don't let the fear hold you back any longer." That urge to retreat had dissipated, replaced by something more intoxicating, a call to confront the fear that had shadowed him for years. Behind this stranger's demands, he sensed opportunity hiding in the shadows. It dawned on him, maybe she wasn't there to mock, but to awaken something dormant within him, an acknowledgement that he could infuse strength into his vulnerabilities. He glanced back at the canvas, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. The moment felt pivotal, bursting with possibility. Could he transcend the limitations and allow himself to be seen, truly seen? This was no longer just about the art, it was about claiming his identity and confronting the chaotic facets of his journey. Taking another deep breath, he stepped up to the canvas, feeling the weight of all eyes on him as he plunged into the colors, bursting forth in frenetic movement and raw expression. Yet the room was alive with anticipation, the challenge echoing in his ears. Would he fulfill the entirety of this new promise, or would he fade back into obscurity? As the paint met the surface, he realized he wasn't just battling his fears, he was facing the emergence of who he truly was. And the next stroke would define how far he was willing to stretch his newfound resilience. But just as the vibrant color began to flow, Max felt an unexpected tremor beneath him, a sense of something shifting, an undercurrent threatening to slice through this fragile connection he was forging. What was about to break loose from the depths? Would his struggle to reveal his truth summon something darker than he had anticipated? The moment the paint kissed the canvas, Max felt the first pulse of liberation surge through him. The colors bloomed with urgency, filling the void that had plagued his confidence for years. Each swipe of the brush became a declaration, a fight against the inadequacy that had shadowed his passion. The stranger's challenge still echoed in his mind, prodding at the edges of his courage. All around him, the energy in the warehouse intensified. He could feel the weight of their anticipation pressing down. This was his moment or his undoing. Max couldn't afford to look back now. Art is not an escape, it's a confrontation, he muttered aloud to himself, digging deep within for the raw emotions he had always kept under wraps. His hands moved with confidence and fervor, lighter than they had felt in months. Each stroke unleashed a chaotic blend of feelings: fear, hope, anger, all colliding in creating something he had never been able to articulate before. The woman in the leather jacket had come to challenge him, but what began as a test transformed into an alchemical process, shifting the fabric of his identity. Layers of doubt peeled away as vibrant paint strokes cascaded across the canvas. He felt his vulnerability shift into boldness, and for the first time, he wasn't painting for validation, he was painting for catharsis. Around him, whispers turned to murmurs of approval. He caught glimpses of nodding heads and curious eyes, each beat of their collective heartbeat pushing him further. It was exhilarating and terrifying, but that fear became fuel. Yet as he worked feverishly, weaving through colors and shapes, a new anxiety began to surface. Who would he become if the truth he was revealing was more powerful than he anticipated? What if he could no longer hide behind a fragile facade? "Why don't you dig deeper?" the woman implored, her voice cutting through his focused haze. "Show them the darkness, too." The shadows breathe just as much life into art as the light does. A shiver ran down his spine. Exposing the darker parts of his journey felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was water beneath. What if the shadows he was so afraid of also harbored truths that could resonate? The question danced tantalizingly on the edge of his consciousness, as if the answer lay entwined with the very brush he wielded. In that moment of hesitation, something flickered at the back of his mind. He remembered the battles of expectations, the struggle of presenting a polished, palatable version of himself to the world, while everything else roiled underneath. Was it possible to find power in those messy corners he had hidden away? He dipped the brush into a deep charcoal gray, hesitating as the color swirled on the palette. It felt like treachery but also an invitation. With one decisive stroke, he let the brush flow in wild abandon, colors blending, layering. Dark against light, chaos against calm, the struggle of his existence spilling forth onto the canvas. The very act stripped back not just paint but layers of self-doubt, revealing raw emotion pulsing through every stroke. The warehouse felt charged, time slipping away in the thrill of his reckoning as the figure of the woman loomed larger than life in his peripheral. Her gaze was unwavering, and in it, he found a mirror reflecting not just his fears but also his potential. With the colors swirling and a storm of feelings pouring out, Max began to feel a latent strength unfurling within him. But just as he neared the crescendo of expression, the ground beneath him trembled once more, this time with sharper intensity, as if the universe was warning him of something looming close by, something hidden. What truth, he wondered, lay on the brink of revelation? Would the act of pouring his soul onto the canvas summon something he was not ready to confront? As he flung another stroke, Max could almost sense it. The pressure in the room felt like it was teetering on the edge of chaos, waiting to tip into something undefined. He steadied himself, heart racing, prepared to face whatever would rise from this creative reckoning. Would he let the shadows consume him, or would he wield them as a testament to resilience? With everything at stake, Max realized he was no longer just painting, he was breaking the very chains that had bound him. But as the final colors melded into view, he understood that what came next would shape not only the canvas but his very identity. He could feel it, the darkness stirring, a challenge yet unanswered. The only question that lingered as the brush hovered over a blank corner of his canvas was whether he would be brave enough to confront it. The moment hung in the air like a storm ready to break. What would he choose to reveal? Would he close the door on his fears or let them flood into his creation? Max took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his own existence pressing against him. A momentary stillness enveloped him as he pondered the brush hovering dangerously close to the canvas, a precipice of opportunity or despair. This was not just color meeting blank space, this was the embodiment of everything he had been running from, a confrontation with his innermost demons. With a determined flick of his wrist, he plunged the brush back into the chaotic dance of colors. As he mixed the hues, the shadows began to take shape, flashes of his past, chaotic moments tightly wound in his psyche. Memories emerged like specters, the rejections, the failures, the nights spent grappling with self-loathing and fear. But with each stroke, they morphed into something new, no longer haunting figures, but parts of a larger narrative he was ready to confront. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the warehouse shifted again. It was electric, with a tension that gripped the watchers tighter as Max bore down harder with the brush, allowing the chaos to reflect the ferocity of his emotions. He was determined, unyielding. He was ready to dig deeper, just as the woman had urged him. This was more than art, it was the unveiling of his truths, contradictions, and battles. The charcoal gray began to blend with flashes of crimson, each movement more assertive than the last. That storm of emotions roiling within him transformed into powerful waves crashing onto the shore of his canvas. Each bold stroke evoked imagery of turmoil and resilience, shadowed angst counterbalanced by a hint of brightness, the small glimmers of hope that whispered he could overcome them. How liberating it felt to be raw, to bleed emotion onto the canvas. And yet, a slender thread of doubt wove its way through his exhilaration. What if this authenticity fractured the tight image he'd curated for so long? What if revealing this unpredictable, vulnerable side alienated those who stood watching, who had begun to see him differently? Max's breath quickened as his inner monologue wrestled for dominance. His mind replayed the implications, the potential risks of laying bare his soul, laid in stark contrast to the overwhelming expanse of internal freedom he was gaining. The brush shivered with hesitation, his hand hovering midair. But what was he afraid of? What could it possibly mean to be embraced as he truly was? Would they simply redefine their perceptions of the Max they thought they knew? The notion sparked a flicker of determination within him. "I'll show them," he breathed fiercely, allowing the brush to carve through the air, slashing the charcoal into the brightness of the yellows and greens swirling around it. He poured everything into that contrast, finally feeling the latent power of vulnerability buoy him up higher. He wasn't merely revealing darkness, but painting those shades with the bold determination to rise above them. The murmurs around him intensified, a collective gasp of anticipation reverberating through the room. It was exhilarating to feel the audience drawn into his struggle, his courage. He was more than a mere artist, he was a storyteller wielding truth and vulnerability like a weapon against the darkness. Then, a thought flickered in his mind, sharper than the rest. This was not just about revealing himself, it was about redefining who he could become. This painting, this moment, was a stepping stone, it was a personal evolution of sorts, an embodiment of his struggles to navigate the realm of artistry and self-worth. As he stepped back, his heart raced with anticipation, a pulsating rhythm echoing in tandem with the shifting emotions of the crowd. The canvas glimmered, a kaleidoscope of hope and despair intermingled. What story did it tell? A question bloomed within him, begging for an answer. But right at that moment, just as he began to hope he may have found the transformative truth, the canvas vibrated with a faint flicker of inner discontent, casting a shadow over his creative whirlwind. There was something left unsaid, something deeper lurking just below the surface of his expression. What would he need to confront next to push further into the vibrant but tumultuous territory of his psyche? Would the darkness emerge as an ally or an adversary? The grip of uncertainty clenched around him, looming ever closer. What awaited him as he stood on this precipice, ready to leap into the unknown? Max had crossed the threshold of fear, diving headfirst into the chaotic whirlpool of creativity, and what awaited him next was the ultimate unveiling of self. With the vigorous strokes on the canvas, he sensed limits surrendering to something beyond mere colors, a genuine reflection of who he was becoming. Despite the looming shadows of uncertainty, frustration, and past failures, he chose to transform them, crafting a narrative rich with audacity. As he stepped back to survey his work, something profound emerged. The chaotic interplay of hues merged not just to tell a story of struggle and triumph but illuminated a path of growth. The canvas pulsed with energy, it resonated with the emotions he had long suppressed. The once familiar fear of failure shifted into a galvanizing force that urged him to plunge deeper into authenticity. The murmurs around him evolved into a frantic orchestra of admiration. His colleagues leaned in, eyes glistening with anticipation and recognition. They were witnessing more than an artistic endeavor, they were experiencing Max's metamorphosis from the shadow of a guarded professor into a vibrant, expressive creator. Yet, amidst this validation, a familiar voice emerged in the back of his mind, steeped in doubt. What if they rejected his truth? Would they see him as flawed, unworthy of admiration? Even as he grappled with the fear, he realized this vulnerability had ignited a spark within him, a deep-seated conviction that he was not just a passive observer but an active participant in the world of art. Taking a deep breath, he surrendered to the moment. Art typically lived in the glossy pages of textbooks and polished presentations, holed up in the safety of lectures, but now, it demanded chaos. He let his hand navigate the canvas freely, evoking movement and emotion, pouring out layers of feelings he had long tucked away. Max's heart raced. He was building a brave narrative, revealing a tapestry that wove together darkness and light into an intricate whole. No longer afraid to confront the shards of his experience, he took each brushstroke as an act of reclamation. "Keep going. Let it out," echoed Tony's voice, grounding him as he pushed harder against the uncertainties. The painted portrait echoed resilience while the flickers of despair and doubt intertwined. It painted not just a picture but a legacy. As the final details emerged, he began to recognize the rich tapestry within his identity. The juxtaposition of hues was a poignant reminder that joy didn't dismiss sorrow, rather, they existed together. The narrative was not merely about the art, but about self-acceptance, the realization that each dark moment, each trembling brushstroke, had steered him toward profound growth. "Show us what you've made," a voice called from the audience. With renewed energy, he took a step back to reveal his creation, no longer just a showcase of talent but a vibrant offering of his complex human experience. It pulsated with raw emotion, an artist bearing his vulnerabilities to the world. As the audience erupted into applause, something within him settled. He understood now that vulnerability was not a weakness it had always masqueraded as. Instead, it was boldness, it was authenticity wrapped in confidence. "I did it," he muttered quietly, almost in disbelief. With the applause still ringing in his ears, feelings of undeniable pride and a surge of self-realization washed over him. The acclaim from his peers was just the beginning. He was ready to reveal himself not only as an artist but as someone who had conquered the shadows of self-doubt and emerged willing to embrace his unique identity. Looking around at the inspired faces of his colleagues, he knew he had taken a tangible step toward mastery. The mix of fear and exhilaration stood together, no longer at odds but melding into the exhilarating experience of new beginnings. From mere theories and confined walls of academia, Max had expanded into an artist unafraid to explore the depths of not only art but of human existence itself. This journey had forged a new identity, illuminating a path previously overshadowed by doubt. With a sense of solid confidence, Max emerged not just transformed but prepared to flourish in the world of artistry he had once viewed from the outside, profoundly aware that his story, woven from threads of both light and darkness, would resonate far beyond the canvas. This was his triumph, a true metamorphosis of identity resulting in undeniable competence in both his art and his understanding of self, establishing him as a recognized artist ready for the next chapter. Don't let this moment slip away. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others hear Max's transformative journey. Comment your reactions and theories about this riveting conclusion, and don't forget to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful story of overcoming. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.